Hey folks, in this example we are going to talk about the search form, and we're going to basically do some kind of introductory concepts and talk about how you manipulate the search form in the interface builder. We're going to show you how to search by custom fields and then also dip our toes into the category system. And so the first thing we're going to do is look at the data that we're working with. It's very simple. It's a handful of rows, and the only thing that's unique about this is I've introduced this column called favorite color, and then we've got a handful of categories. Everything else mirrors the example files that you can download when you're importing. So as long as we're talking about that, let's go ahead and import this data that we are looking at. And during the process, I think we will create that favorite color custom field. So I was just looking at that starter import file. And it'll go through, and it's giving us a warning here that one of these is unmatched. So I scroll off to the right, favorite color, sure enough, we're going to let it create it as a custom field. Everything else looks good. Go ahead and click next. I'm going to wipe out the data I've got in this sample account and just hit finish. Now that that's all imported, let's just take a glance. Yes, it's geocoded, it's published, so that means it's good to go. I'm going to go over to the interface builder now, and we can start manipulating the search form. So this is a rich media template. It's my favorite template. It's the one that I use for all these videos, and ultimately it's the one that we do most of our testing with, and it has a lot of the, I think, the best defaults to work with. So the default behavior is a zip code search form and the category search form. So before we dive into leveraging our custom fields and our categories, I want to talk a little bit about the location search form. It's a little bit misunderstood, and so if you go under search form and local search, you'll see the humble location search input. Normally it's labeled enter zip code because that's frankly what most people understand when they come to a locator. They want to type in their zip code. And so that's totally fine, but you should know that you can type in any geographic term in here. For example, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I can search for that. I could even search for my home address. I could search for like the state of Florida, like so. And I could do all sorts of things. Any geographic term, for the most part, you can type in there, and if the system understands it, it'll use it as a search. While we're in here, some of the other options are autocomplete. If you're a pro or higher user, when somebody starts typing a term, autocomplete will suggest additional options as you type that in. Autofill is the idea that we will pre-populate the user's detected zip code and stick it in the input before so that the user doesn't have to type it in. So autocomplete is that kind of type ahead feature that as you're typing it'll try to make suggestions. Autofill simply pre-populates this input so that the user doesn't have to type in their zip code. Like any other search option in MetaLocator, you have the ability to customize the label. So I could say postal code, and I probably would want to update my placeholder accordingly so that they both say enter postal code. I'm personally not a fan of tooltips on inputs because people's mouse is over there, and between the placeholder and the label it should be okay. I can decide that before the user hits submit, they have to enter a postal code, and the container determines whether or not it's in basic, interstitial, or advanced. We're not going to talk about interstitial yet, but if there's any search input in the advanced container as determined by dragging it and dropping it, you'll see this little guy, which allows you to create effectively an advanced search area that is hidden by default, but that allows the user to have this area where there are secondary search controls. So after that little detour into locations and the advanced search, let's go back to searching with custom fields. So I introduced this custom field called favorite color. I'm going to go ahead and add that to my search form by clicking add field and then choosing favorite color. If I click add field there, the first thing it'll do is it will generate a drop-down of the unique values of the data. And so notice we have blue, red, green, blue, and that's only shown once, of course, in the drop-down. So if I search here for blue, it's going to give me all of the locations that are blue, and because I had 53202 in there, it's also going to look for them just near 53202. And so here we see sample location 3, sample location 6. And now we've got autofill doing its job, inserting that, that zip code. For the moment, I'm going to turn that off. And the search form options for custom fields can be shown by expanding the little caret right next to favorite color. And one of the coolest ones is display type. When we added that custom field to the search form, it was automatically displayed by as a drop-down list whose data source was the table data. And when it says table, it really means the database that contains all the data, which is which is red, green, blue in that case. So the data is being populated by the values in the table. Now you could also leverage the interface settings. So I could have a custom value in here, like I don't know, orange, blue, red. And so if I populate those values, now the dropdown is going to contain orange, blue, red. Now we don't have any orange data, but we do have blue and red data, and so if the user searches for this, they should get those same results. So one of the other options in here is field settings. The field settings are found on the at the field level. So if I come over here and I look at the fields, we'll have a list of all the fields in the account, one of which is favorite color. And if I click on that, the type is text. But if I change that to a list of checkboxes, I could say yellow, purple. And just to be consistent, I'm going to call this a drop-down list, yellow, purple. Now let's go back to the interface builder here. And I'm going to save my changes here because I've got to reload this interface in order for it to reflect this option. So let's go back to favorite color, and we left it at interface settings. So it's driven by these options, orange, blue, and red. But now we can drive it by the field settings, which should be yellow and purple, as you see here. And the only reason you would want to do that is you might want to control the values coming in that are available for your users to search, and you don't want those to be impacted by data changes that might be occurring. For example, like bulk imports might have different unexpected data in there. If you want to be absolutely sure that this box is only going to ever show yellow and purple, that's a great way to do it by way of the field settings and the interface settings. Both have that benefit. The only difference on the field settings is the field settings also control what happens when you go into a record. And let's say I wanted to come in here and I was manually controlling the values of favorite color. Notice that this is now displayed as a drop-down. Before I made these field setting changes, if I put this back to where it was as just a regular text field, this is what it displays by default. It's just a little text input, right? It just has the option for me to type right in there. But if I change the field to display as instead a drop-down list, and I give it those values yellow, purple, that means that the data entry form is now aligned with the search form. The more common approach is to leverage interface settings, and frankly, actually the most common approach is to just use the drop-down as driven by the values in the system. And so that would be drop-down and table. We've only been exploring drop-down lists so far. So this is the options to choose blue, red, and so forth. But I can also display these as a series of checkboxes. So in this example, you can see that now we've got checkboxes for orange, blue, and red. as driven by the interface settings. Now, because checkboxes take up so much space, the table option is not available. And so you would not want to accidentally have, I don't know, 5,000 checkboxes occur on your interface, but it's okay if they're hidden in a dropdown, and that's why we don't do the data-driven series of checkboxes. The other element is text input. This one's pretty cool. It basically creates a keyword search that is limited to the favorite color field. So if I typed in something like red, I could find all locations with red. And as opposed to the keyword search field, which searches all text fields. And so if you have something, if you had a street name that included the letters RED, that would also appear. So if you wanted to create a search form that only searched this favorite color option, you could do that. And of course, you probably want to give it a good label. If I can type favorite color. And so that is a good overview of how custom fields can be brought into the search form.